I got a network update for you guys from T-Mobile. Another great article from Fierce Wireless. I will leave it in the description down below. So you partially heard me mention this previously during the earnings call videos in terms of what T-Mobile mentioned and talked about on the DoD spectrum that they purchased, which stands for Department of Defense, the 3.45 gigahertz that they were able to purchase in auction 110. So they went very aggressive across 184 million pops. So they didn't quite buy as much footprint as they did with the C-band spectrum. C-band, they bought enough spectrum to cover 225 million pops. So what Neville Ray mentioned during the earnings call is that in terms of supply, the supply chain filling that and then waiting for the OEMs in Ericsson and Nokia to establish and build out a single band radio that is able to do both frequencies, the dual band. So they are, like you see here in this article, T-Mobile eyes 3.45 gigahertz C-band, one and done. So they want to do both, one tower climb, a single radio. That is the most efficient and smart way to deploy. It's the cheapest, the best way to do it. Now, he did not give any targets. He just said the deployment would start in 23. He did not reference any pop count, so he didn't tell us, or I'm going to cover 100 million pops with this spectrum by the end of 23. He did not give any of those targets, and also T-Mobile did not hint at an analyst day happening in March. So we will likely have to wait until a later time for them to give those targets. Maybe in the spring. Who knows? We'll see. I'll keep you guys up to date on that. So here's what I think T-Mobile is going to try to do over the next 24 months. So the acceleration of CapEx starts this year. If you guys heard me mention it during the earnings call, they raised their CapEx to $13.5 billion. I'm just going to start saying that because I truly believe that's where they'll end up spending for the year, because they have a lot of work to do. So that means they took work that they were going to do in 23 and they're trying to squeeze that work into 22. So like I mentioned before, all the network shutdowns that are going to happen this year. Sprint CDMA network will be shut down. The LTE network will be shut down. All that spectrum is going to be refarmed for 5G use. T-Mobile is shutting down their 2G network, their HSPA network this year as well. So that's also spectrum that's going to be refarmed for 5G. That costs money. And then, the decommissioning of the Sprint sites will also cost some money, because that means they have to break leases. That's going to cost money. They're going to have to pay that up front. That'll have to get paid. So that's gonna cost a lot of money. They didn't disclose how much, but if you go by AT&T, they're saying just their HSPA shutdown is going to cost them almost $400 million. You can just, you can guess T-Mobile is going to spend into the billions shutting down those networks. Then they want to do all of the Sprint sites this year. The keep sites. They want to have those converted and transitioned over to the T-Mobile equipment. So that's going to happen much quicker and at a larger scale. And then, of course, getting from the 210 million pops covered to 260. That's the guided public guidance. I still think very strongly they get to that 270, 275 million covered with N41 by the end of year. And then the coverage expansion. They still have to expand coverage. So that's going to come too. Some of that will come from the Sprint coverage sites, and some of that will come from newly constructed T-Mobile sites. 100% T-Mobile funded. This coverage expansion, there's no cutting corners on that. T-Mobile will have to fund that with raw CapEx, and they're going to do what I presume is a good amount of work of that this year. So then a lot of people are concerned. A lot of people are sending me messages. They're saying, hey, T-Mobile's going to lower the CapEx next year. Does that mean they give up? Does that mean they concede? Does that mean they slow down? People will debate and argue that all day long. There's just you can't win, because in a business environment where the industry is so CapEx intensive, you can't come in and say you're going to spend less and say you're going to win. That's a tough task. But what I think they're going to do in 23, they're going to start prioritizing, right? N41 will be at the end of the cycle in terms of deployment. So the end of 23, they want to be at 300 million covered, and they really haven't guided beyond that. 24, 25, we don't know if N41 will go above 300 million. So the end goal, the end target, from what it sounds like, is N41 will stop its deployment at 300 million covered. So they'll prioritize that next year. So some of that funding, even though it's lower, some of that fund will go towards finishing that. Then the deployment of that C-band and that DoD spectrum starts. Again, we have no targets. They say they're in no rush because they have, 100 plus megahertz of N41 in markets. Now, again, some markets it is fragmented, so it is an issue. And that's where I believe they'll start. They'll start supplementing that spectrum, the DoD and the C-band, in markets where they have a huge fragmentation issue with the N41 spectrum. So I strongly believe that's where that deployment will start. That's the second priority. And then the third priority is coverage expansion. I think they prioritize that. Now, the small cell build, that'll be handled by Crown Castle. So Crown Castle will build those small cells. T-Mobile will be a tenant and pay rent. That's how Crown Castle will make their money back. Crown Castle builds multi-station small cells is what I call them. That's probably not the proper term, but they build for several tenants. So when they build a small cell, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile can get on that small cell. Maybe even Dish. Who knows? I don't know how big those small cells are, but that's how Crown Castle structures their small cells. Kind of like a tower build. So from what I'm being told, that in terms of the small cell build, there's a deal that's struck on the back end, and T-Mobile will have already funded what they need to be paying, and then that doesn't necessarily come out of CapEx other than what they have to fund to actually get equipment onto that small cell. But in terms of the infrastructure and all that, that's handled by Crown Castle. So that will happen gradually. Crown Castle said they're going to build 5,000 of those this year, then 10,000 next year. And then we'll see where they're going to put those. And then, we'll just see T-Mobile get onto those small cells as a tenant. So the three main priorities in 2023, 2.5, getting that to 300 million covered. Then the DoD and the C-band spectrum. I don't know what those targets are. I've asked around. I'm not hearing anything. T-Mobile hasn't hinted towards an analyst day, so we'll have to wait and see what they target for 2023 on that deployment. And then the coverage expansion. Those are the three main priorities for 23, and that's where I think they focus the capital on, the lower capital on for that year. They're going to get a lot done with $13.5 billion this year. You're going to see a lot of work happening on a nationwide scale. I can promise you that. You're going to see Sprint sites being converted. You're going to see more N41 in rural places. You're going to see further coverage expansion. You're going to see more N71 go up in these rural towns. There's going to be growth and pace at a good clip with T-Mobile spending $13.5 billion. They've never spent that much on the network ever. So you can anticipate a ton of work going into the ground this year. They're going to get rolling. They're going to get the permits rolling. They're going to get the tower crews up and running. Bonuses are going to be handed out. I'm telling you guys, T-Mobile is going all in to maintain that lead, and that shows why they are accelerating the CapEx for this year. So leave all your comments in the comment section down below. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel. Like, share, and subscribe. Follow the social media outlets for more updates and interactions. This is Tyrone with Tech Life, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.